Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. So, I want to start off today with a total spoiler alert, namely that third parties aren't. In the past few weeks, a lot of fuck third parties mudslinging has been shoved to the spotlight for the sheeple show, particularly after the conventions when thousands of voters on both sides had this to say about the Democratic and Republican choices. It then followed that people started peering past the two-party compound to see if there might be a glimmer of hope and change on the other side. Well, corporate media proceeded to throw shit at these questioning faces, suggesting that if you vote third party, your least favorite of the two chosen ones will win, making their victory entirely your fault. You'll lose all your friends, and on Judgment Day you'll go straight to the deepest circle of hell, or something to that effect. Well, let me just say, as usual, fuck you, corporate media, and the putrid political pundits that you praise. And also, here's the real story. Let's start with some recent history. In 2000, Green Party candidate Ralph Nader was blamed for the election of George W. Bush, supposedly because many progressives threw their vote away on him rather than vote for Al Gore. So did they? Well, leaving the juiciest state for last, if you look at, for example, Tennessee, Gore's home state, and Arkansas, outgoing President Clinton's home state, Gore just lost both of those to Bush. But hey, what about New Hampshire or Oregon? The margin of Bush's win is less than the votes that went to Nader. In New Hampshire, for example, Nader won about 22,000 votes, and Bush won by only 7,500 votes. Well, Democratic drones, hold your ha till I'm done here. According to exit polls, only about 47% of the Nader voters would have voted for Gore in a two-way race, while 21% would have voted for Bush, and 30% would have just abstained from voting in the presidential contest altogether. Now, that suggests that the amount of votes needed to push Gore into the White House wouldn't have come from those pesky Naderites anyway. Okay, but what about Florida? Every Democrat's favorite Benedict Arnold 2000. Well, there, exit polls showed that had Nader not been in the race, Bush would have actually won by more. And furthermore, Nader actually stole votes from both Bush and Gore at the same rate. That equal opportunist thief. So it seems that if you want to blame anybody for the Florida debacle, you might start with Justices Thomas and Scalia, who stopped the Florida recount. Or, hey, why not just blame Democrats? Yeah, Democrats. Here's a rough reality. 308,000 Democrats in Florida voted for Bush, while only 24,000 Democrats voted for Nader. Fucking A. It looks like Democrats should expend more energy on bashing their own party people for actually voting for Bush rather than trying to say that those who voted for Nader somehow in a roundabout, not really at all kind of way voted for Bush. But of course, Democrats can't do that. That would mean having to address why more than 300,000 people thought their party's nominee was less enticing than this guy. As Kevin Zeese and Margaret Flowers wrote in a recent article for Truthdig, the Democrats needed to make Nader into a scapegoat because they did not want to admit the real reasons that Gore lost to Bush. The real reasons would have challenged Democratic Party orthodoxy of Wall Street and war that still dominates the party today. Al Gore was one of the founders of the Corporate Democratic Leadership Council. He, along with Bill Clinton and other corporate Democrats, believed that taking funding from big business interests and doing their bidding was the path to defeating the Republicans. He also had a long record as a supporter of a large military budget and U.S. wars. If the Democrats admitted that their selection of a corporate militarist ticket is what cost them the election, it would turn their big business funding base against them. Rather than move away from selecting those kind of candidates, the Democrats blamed Nader for Gore's defeat and continue to this day to nominate similar candidates. And regardless of where you sit on the spectrum, if we compare Gore's viewpoints to Hillary Clinton's, there's a lot of overlap, not least of all in the sphere of military and corporate relations. So, are we set to see Nader Myth, the sequel, play out this November? Well, if you've been paying attention to the conversation surrounding Green Party candidate Jill Stein, the same plotline is already forming. A vote for Jill is a vote for Trump. The threat of everlasting damnation looms once again. And yes, that threat makes just as much nonsense today as it did 16 years ago. A vote for Jill Stein is a vote for Jill Stein. A vote for Gary Johnson is a vote for Gary Johnson. A vote for Gloria La Riva is a vote for Gloria La Riva. And that's just the point. This isn't just about going blue or green. This is about the larger point of trying to scare people into voting for the status quo when their real fears amount to what the status quo is and will continue to be precisely because they give into that fear. It's about facts and evidence that boldly prove that anyone running outside the royal duopoly is not guilty of crowning the most evil candidate, including this guy. So truly, if it's not simply acting out of fear, why wouldn't we cast our votes outside the two-party system? Particularly if we may already have a presidential victor months before voting day. Already in mid-August, NBC News reported that Clinton had surpassed the 270 electoral votes required to win the White House. So then, if our great country has already decided on its next fearless leader, why throw away your vote on her? As Kevin Zeese wrote recently in his article for The Guardian, which, by the way, gave me the idea for this segment and should definitely be required reading for anyone of voting age, quote, "Use your vote to challenge corporate power." And while Zeese is a vocal Green Party supporter, he knows this election isn't about seeing Stein win. As he wrote to me, anyone who understands political change knows the only path to winning is losing, and losing, and losing. Historically, third parties haven't, and haven't needed to, win the White House in order to influence policy. For example, the New Deal was crafted entirely from the progressive and socialist parties, neither one of whom were actually the ones to sign it into action. As Zeese notes, the formula has been mass movement plus independent electoral party equals transformational change. By forcing their issues into the political agenda, people have broken up banking and energy monopolies, won the right to form unions in an 8-hour workday, ended child labor, and won the vote for women. In other words, third parties don't spoil elections, they spoil coronations. Their place on the ballot shows that there are millions of Americans who don't fit into the two-party paradigm and don't want to. These parties and the movements that give rise to them pull people out of apathy and back onto the political stage where we all belong, inspired by the push for change, something that neither party wants. Whatever your issues are, however you see yourself on the political spectrum, do vote your conscience, and do savor that, because I might never again agree with Ted Cruz. Do not give in to the politics of fear, the politics of shut the fuck up and get back in line. Step out of line. Use your own mind and cast your vote for the greater good, not the lesser evil.